Okay, so Kanban general practices. I've got this PowerPoint slide here, and there are quite a few slides to go through. I'll be giving a lot of real life examples as well as covering the material on the Kanban general practices. And with KnowledgeHut, who are a great learning provider, we actually run specific Kanban courses. So we run certified Kanban courses taught by myself and other instructors as well. So if you like what you see over the next 45 minutes or so, do feel free to take that learning even further and book onto one of our Kanban courses. Okay, so just a quick about me. Born in London, the UK. I have a degree in computing with business, and I also took a master's degree in business computing. I then went on to enjoy a career in IT consultancy, where I worked very much across the software development lifecycle. And that's when I got introduced into Agile, which covered many different frameworks of Agile, the most popular Scrum, and just as equal Kanban, which I will be talking about today. Through that journey, I've been able to achieve the Accredited Kanban Trainer status alongside the Certified Scrum Professional via Scrum Alliance, who are the governing body for Scrum, or one of the governing bodies for Scrum, and also ICAgile, who I deliver courses for regularly. Okay, so you can see just a brief CV, if you like, or resume of my experience there, very much in the banking world of Blue and Dolphin and Investec. But you can see the consultancy experience down there at the bottom with SQS, who are now Explio Group, where I would move from client to client to work on different software development projects. Okay, so quite an exciting time over the last, say, 10 years or so in regards to IT consultancy. And so without further ado, let's continue. Okay, so what are we going to be looking at in this session? I think it was about this time last month, or probably just before, I did a webinar on Scrum versus Kanban. It's always quite a popular debate. Why should we use Scrum? Where do we use Scrum? Why should we use Kanban? Where do we use Kanban? Is there an element where we can perhaps use both? Can we take a bit from Scrum or can we take a bit from Kanban? What if we were going to have a project where we could have Kanban in its entirety? Okay, whether we are working with software or many other types of projects, and what is using Kanban all about? Okay, so I've just got 4 headings here. Visualize with a Kanban board. Okay, limit work in progress with Kanban, manage workflow, and implement feedback loops. But what do these all mean? They all sound very good and very progressive, but visualize with a Kanban board. What exactly are we speaking about here? Are we perhaps speaking about the work that we have in front of us, the work that we are currently doing, or the work that we have completed? What does that visibility look like? How many people do we have on a project who needs to have the visibility of what it is we're doing, what are we going to do, and what have we already done? Could be absolutely fantastic for status updates, okay, and everyone in the team knowing what's happening at any given time. So we look at visibility, okay? Visibility, very important when it comes to Kanban because it gives a point of reference. Has anyone in their projects ever had a daily stand-up where you may group around as a team every morning and you talk about the work that you're doing and the work that you are yet to do, okay? Or if you've got any issues with the work that you're doing. Now, sometimes, a lot of the time, you can have a daily stand-up and there's no point of reference. So when I say point of reference, there's nothing that you can sort of look at and say, well, this is what I'm talking about. Okay, I worked on a product item yesterday, and this is the issue that I have. Okay, so what does that point of reference look like? Perhaps we might have a board where you've got all the work that you're doing, and you can say, well, this is my ticket right here. This is the work that I'm working on. And we are going to either move this across the board to say, well, we are getting closer to finishing. Okay, and I'll show you what a Kanban board can look like if you have yet to see one. But think of 4 columns. Okay, you've got perhaps to do, in progress, blocked, and done. So let's talk about those 4 columns where visibility is concerned. So in your to-do is your to-do list. This is all the work that I have to do going forward. This is the team. This is us as individuals. And this is our workload. Okay, my workload today is I have to deliver this webinar to the great people that are signed on and are listening. Okay, so that's part of my workload for today. And then you've got the next column, in progress. So I might move that work along. And then I can say, well, the work of delivering a webinar is actually in progress. It's happening right now. And then I might have a column called blocked. And for whatever reason, I am unable to log in to this webinar. I might have internet issues. I may have audio issues. Okay, so at that moment in time, it is blocked. And when it is blocked, or whether the work is in progress, everyone is able to see it. Everyone can see what's happening at any given time. And that's what we talk about when it comes to visualization. Okay. And then, of course, once you're completed that work, you then may move it over to done. And that is a very simple way of designing a Kanban board: to do, in progress, blocked, and done. Now, when we get deeper and further into Kanban, you will then realize that it can go even further in depth. There's far more columns that one could come across, that one could produce, and really get into the depths of managing workflow. But for now, this is how we're going to start, okay? And then you've got limit work in progress with Kanban, just the second bullet point down there. Now, I just told you I had a to-do column and I had an in progress column, but how much work can I handle at any given time? Okay, there's only one of me, or I only have 2 hands or whatnot. How much work am I able to manage at any given time? Okay, what does that workload look like? And this is what we talk about when we speak of limiting work in progress with Kanban. Okay, because if I have too much work in progress, then I might be under stress. I may not get the work right because I'm trying to rush through it. That could then impact on quality. Okay, so these are all the sorts of caveats that could happen if you've got too much work in progress. Once you've allocated the right amount of work that you can handle or your team can handle, then the flow of work moves much quicker. And I use the word flow because that takes us on to our third bullet point: manage workflow. Okay, so we ultimately want, if you heard the columns I gave earlier with to do, in progress, blocked, and done, and I'll give examples where there could be much more. Okay, if you're managing the workflow, how quickly are we getting from one side of the board, if you like, to the other? Okay, how long does that take? Is it a constant, steady flow? Okay, or is it that there's too much items on one side and on the other side it's very empty? So how do we manage workflow to get an equal balance throughout? Okay, and one of the key things in Agile, which Kanban does fall under, as well as Lean and XP and Scrum, Kanban is another Agile framework, if you like, is change. That's one of the key things in change of Agile is change. How do we adapt to change? Well, one of the most important things is the 4th bullet point down: implementing feedback loops. How do we know if what we're doing is working if we never speak about it? Okay, so we spoke about a daily stand-up potentially, being able to talk about what you're doing at any given time. Do you have any issues? And what work have you not started yet? Okay, but let's take that feedback loop even further. How do we know then what work to bring in from to do to in progress? What does that conversation look like? Do we just pick the next item off the list, or do we have a conversation to say, well, this is the priority, this is the estimate of how long the work will take, and this is how much work we can handle at any given time? Okay, and that may change. You might have new team members. You may lose a team member. where the work in progress needs to reduce. Or you may hire 2 more staff where you can increase the work in progress. Okay, or you might have another stage of work. So you've got to do in progress blocked, and then you might have another column that represents another team. Okay, so we are constantly evolving, constantly improving our processes. And one of the best ways to do that is to implement feedback loops. Is what we are doing working? How can we get it better? How can we improve? How do we manage how do we manage when someone's got 2 weeks annual leave? How do we then cope with the work that we have? We need to have a feedback loop so we can feedback. Okay. Also very important, if you're delivering work to a customer, are we sure that we are on track to deliver what the customer actually wants? Okay. So that's visualized with a Kanban board. You're looking at the topics that we will get further into. Limiting work in progress with Kanban. Okay, so we're limiting how much work we can take on at any given time. Okay, we're managing workflow, of course. Is it a steady flow of work? Is there an equal balance of work across the columns, i.e. to do, in progress, and so forth? Okay, and then we're implementing feedback loops. Okay, what does our communication look like? How are we improving? What suggestions are we giving? If it's a thumbs up, are we on the right track? Then let's say that we are on the right track, and let's continue as we mean to go on. Is there something we can do better? Well, let's have a look at where the deficit is. Perhaps we might have lost a team member, or the work is slowly increasing. Okay, or which work are we deciding to bring in from to do to in progress? What is that conversation looking like? Priority, estimate, how long will it take? Okay. And this brings me on to this crowded board here, with I've got the columns of general practices, and I've added 2 other columns in change principles and service delivery principles, because they all go hand in hand. But let's have a look at the 6 columns down the left. Where you've got visualize, which we just spoke through and went in quite a bit of detail. Okay, and then you've got limit work in progress. Now, this is a very interesting one, and I did touch on this earlier, where limiting work in progress allows you to handle the amount of work that is feasible for yourself or for the team. Okay, so we're looking at, in Kanban, we call it a pull system as opposed to a push. And when we say push, we're meaning that people are pushing work onto you. Okay, whereas a pull system, you are calling work when you are ready to accept it. Okay, so if you think about the 2 differences between that, the push and the pull, if you have a management in your organization or a lead of some sort, and every time new work comes in, they are adding it to your queue. And then when you look at your queue of work, you are just seeing a never-ending finishing line. Okay, and that could compromise the quality that you're putting into the work, because you believe you may not have sufficient time to get through the work as it stands. Okay, so this is what we talk about limiting work in progress. So we are able to take the amount of work that we can handle at any given time. Okay, and also you're looking at seniorities in teams. I may be a junior developer, and my colleague might be a senior developer who's been around for 10 plus years. I might have just finished university last week, and this is my first role. So naturally, you would think that the work in progress for me as a junior developer would be less or lower than the work in progress for a senior developer. So different individuals in the team can have different limitations into what they can handle at any given time. And you can then just branch this out, and it could be teams. Teams that are less mature or have worked together, who haven't worked together as long. Their work in progress might be smaller to a much more mature team who have been working on the project for a good length of time. Okay, and then we spoke about managed flow. earlier, so I won't go too much into that. Now, make policies explicit. Now, policies, what are policies? Policy in the normal understanding, there's a policy and a procedure. This is how we do things. This is the work policy. But what do policies mean in this instant? Well, policies are the column headings. Okay, so you've got to do, in progress, blocked and done. That's the very simple design of a Kanban board. Okay, and your to do is a policy. So it's an explicit policy where there is no confusion, there's no ambiguity. So the to do column means that work that is yet to be done, and that work will sit in the to do column. And then in progress, we'll say, well, this is in progress. This is what we are working on right now. Okay, and then you might have blocked, which is work that you are unable to move forward. And then you might have done, where your work is completed. Okay, so this is making policies explicit. So there's no ambiguity to what those columns are. So the policies are the column headings that you see on a Kanban board. Okay. And then you've got implement feedback loops, which we spoke about earlier. And all of these things that I've mentioned already, they gather different types of communication, different opinions, different suggestions. This is what we should do. This is why we should do it. This is how we are going to do it. Okay. And most importantly, we improve collaboratively and we evolve experimentally. Okay. So that completes your 6 general practices of Kanban. Okay, so we improve collaboratively. We all work as a team if you are in a team-based situation, and we evolve experimentally. Is it possible to never get things wrong? Well, of course not. And how we have to look at our work in progress limits, and we might get that incorrect for the first week. It might be spot on for the second week, and it may have to change again in the 4th week. Okay, so sometimes the earlier you fail, the better, because then you can quickly do something about it. Okay, the earlier you realize that you're probably not on the same path. So we evolve experimentally. Okay, so those are your general practices. And on the next slide, I will show you a far more in-depth Kanban board for the audience who work in the software development environment. It might be a board that you would have seen during your time at work. Okay, and I'm just going to couple these general practices with change principles and service delivery principles, just so we can add some context into why we're doing them. Okay, so we've got your general practices on the left, and the change principles starts with what you do now. Okay, so when we are implementing these processes into our workplace, okay, we are not doing an overhaul and saying, right, everyone stop what you're doing. We've got this new thing called Kanban, and you are going to change everything what you do from when you come in to when you leave. No, we are going to understand what is already in progress or in process and just add this framework to support it, as opposed to completely change it. Okay, and this gets me to the second point of understanding current processes as actually practiced. What is it that you actually do now? Okay, and then that concludes with respecting existing roles, responsibilities, and job titles. So the Kanban is just literally a system in the form of a board that you can visualize that allows you just to manage the work that you're doing. So you're able to spot mistakes early, you're able to spot where there's too much work being allocated to one area. If you look at your in progress, you're able to see whether you've got a constant flow of work. Okay, and then you can also perhaps measure how long it takes to work to get from one side of the board to the other. Okay. And if I just go a bit further down the column there, still under change principles, you've got gain agreement to pursue improvement through evolutionary change. Okay, gain agreement. Well, let's get everyone's buy-in. Let's not just go off and do our own thing. Let's get the involvement of the team. Let's get everyone involved, from the people who are doing the testing, the people who are doing development work, to the people who are doing project management or whatever the role may be. Let's have a buy-in from everyone. So we are looking at improvement through evolutionary change. Okay, and then let's get the whole organization buying into why we do Kanban and perhaps scaling Kanban throughout the other departments. Okay, and this is a very interesting one, still under change principles, where you've got encourage acts of leadership at all levels. Okay, so people should be owning their work. And I'll again show you on the next slide of what a typical Kanban board can look like. But if you've got different teams and different roles and responsibilities, they may have their own column. So what you've got to do in progress could be split into testing, development, analysis, okay? And then when a piece of work is in the testing column, that is owned by the testers, and the testers will give you updates and they will give you feedback and say where they are with their work, and the developers will talk on the work in their column, okay? And everyone has ownership of the work that they do, okay? And then we've got service delivery principles, okay? And then you're looking at the end result. What are we providing here? So if you're working on a product that will at some point land in the customer's hands, how do we utilize Kanban to get the best out of this? Okay, so you've got some service delivery principles here where you've got understand and focus on the customer's needs and expectations. Needs and expectations could be revolved around cost and budget, could also be revolved around how long it will take to build if you're working in software development, how long will the customer be waiting before they can get that product, and of course, how user-friendly, how enjoyable, how marketable the product is. So you can have a product that has nothing wrong with it, no defects, it meets specification, but it's just not fun to use. It's not the car with the metallic blue. It's quite a dull color, which just does not look attractive. Okay, so this is what we're talking about when we look at service delivery principles, when we are trying to understand and focus on the customer's needs and expectations. Okay, so what we're doing here, we're managing the work. We are not managing the people. So manage the work, let workers self-organize around it. Okay, so based on the flow that we have on our Kanban board, you might have to do in progress, and progress could be split between analysis, development, and testing. And then after that, it could then be customer sign-off or customer review. And then after customer review, it then can get to done. We are managing the flow of work. So every element of work may have a ticket allocated to it. So work item 1 is ticketed at 1.1, and then you move 1.1 throughout the Kanban board. Okay, and then you're managing the workflow and looking at how much work in progress people are working on at any given time. How long is the work taking to get from one side of the board to the other? Okay, these are the sorts of questions that we're asking. Okay, so we're managing the flow of work. We're not managing people as such. Okay. And regularly review the network and its policies to improve outcomes. Again, very similar to feedback. Okay, so we're constantly looking at ways that we can improve. Do we need to change our columns, our policies? Do we need to look at our work in progress? How much staff do we have available? Okay, what is our demand versus capacity? Can we handle the amount of work coming, or are we in a great place that we can invite even more work? Okay, just keeping one eye on the time here. Before I know it, it will be midnight in India time. So just keeping an eye on the digital clock on my screen there. Okay. Well, have a look at this. I did give you the simplicity of to do in progress, blocked and done. If only life was so simple. But this is what a Kanban board looks like in software delivery. Okay, so let's walk you through this board. Very complex. It's all happening here in whichever organization this may represent. Okay, so you've got your to-do column. This is all the work that you have in your project or whatever it is that you're working on. And this is your to-do list. Okay, and then you've got this arrow of commitment points. So that's telling me that once the work moves from to-do into development, you are now committed to the work. Okay, so what is the opposite to being committed to the work? That work is optional. So whilst the work is in that to-do list column, it's optional. It can be discarded. We may not need it anymore. It could be a duplicate of something else. The customer could change their mind. So whilst everything's in the to-do column, we are not taking any measurements from that point. Okay, now you think of ordering a pizza. Okay, you phone up the pizza delivery shop and you order your favorite takeaway. And at that moment in time, that order is an option. But once they take payment, they are then committed to that order because you've actually paid money for that work to begin. And then once that work begins, i.e. putting the toppings on the pizza and putting it through the oven and whatnot, it can then work through the policies, whatever that Kanban looks like for pizza delivery, and they can commit to the work. But what if you were to phone up and cancel whilst it's in the to-do stage, or you changed your order? Okay, so we try to keep work in to-do as long as possible to be able to analyze, do we still need it? Is it something that we are going to commit to work on? Because once it's past that commitment point, it's then a cost to the team. We've then got people that are working on that product. Okay, so let's move in. We've gone past to do, we are now in development, and we have split development into 3 areas: code review, unit test, dev done, all very complex development stuff that the developers get lost in from time to time. Okay, but instantly I'm looking at visibility. I can see where work is at any given time. And I've got a number 5 next to development. So that's telling me that development can only handle 5 items of work at any given time. This is what the developers are saying to me. Okay, so if I'm a project manager, or I'm in charge of moving work along or suggesting what work needs to be done, development are telling me that they can only do 5 items of work at any given time. Why? They may only have 3 members of staff, or however amount of staff that's needed to do development work of 5 items. Okay, so instantly I'm looking at this and I can see where the work is at any given time. So let's move on. You've got system integration testing. So this is the world of testers. They want to make sure that what the work is being done has quality. Does it work? Is it doing what it's meant to do? Okay. And they've also got a work in progress of 5, as you can see it bracketed there. Okay, so now this is a point of reference. We now have our daily stand-up on a Tuesday morning or Wednesday morning, and we say, well, what are you working on? And all we need to do is look on this board and we talk through the work that we are currently doing. We speak about what we did yesterday, and we are potentially speaking about what we are yet to do. Okay, and the board continues. You've now got user acceptance testing. This is where the customer sits down and says, well, does this match what I've asked for? Okay, and then you've got a second commitment point. So when you then get to done, the team that are in charge of deployment might be separate to the software development team. Okay, so that work is now handed over, and once that's handed over, there's sort of no going back. So it's a second point of commitment. But what do we have here at the bottom? We've got lead time of 25 days. Okay, so this is telling me that, well, from one side of the board to the other, we are saying that it takes about 25 days to get the item through development, through testing, and into deployment. Okay, so a question I then have, rhetorical, because I will answer it myself, is why do we not calculate the lead time from the to-do column? Well, as I suggested, or as I advised about 5 minutes ago, When the work is in the to-do column, it's still optional. It is still optional and anything can happen. That work may stay in there for a year because it's a low priority. So we cannot calculate the lead time from our to-do list. We calculate the lead time when we get into a stage of commitment. Okay, and this is what a very advanced, I must say, Kanban board can look like. Okay, I'll just quickly get you to walk you through the other wordings on the board there. You can see stuff like external dependencies. So if you've got work in development and it's waiting on something outside of the development team for that work to continue, it might have a server issue, it might have something that the operations team needs to deal with. Instead of halting the work and stopping the flow of work, you might pull that down into the external dependencies area where it can sit there until it's ready to be worked on again. Okay, and then you've got discard and abort, and discard is always a better word than abort. When discard is spoken of in Kanban, we are looking at our to-do list and we're looking at what we don't need, and we can take that out. We may have a duplicate, there's no funding for it anymore, the budget is has been pulled back, or the priority is just not there anymore. So we may be able to discard that item. But once that item is then committed and we started working on it, we may then have to use the stronger word in abort, and aborting that item and pulling the item out of our Kanban system here. Okay, and this is not something that we are trying to do often, though it does happen, but we try to keep this as minimal as possible. Why? Because it's our cost of delay. It uses money. We've already started spending. Once we've got into our committed cycle, we are applying time. Okay, developers charge a lot of money to do their work. So once they're starting work on it, we do not want to abort the work, though it does happen. But this is also good to create metrics. Okay, so we're looking at how much work can be aborted, or we're looking at how much work has been discarded, and we're looking at those metrics and using those as a point of reference when we have our feedback sessions. Okay, so just from this board alone, what does my feedback sessions look like? Well, I'm looking at the to-do column, and my first conversation is, well, what work are we planning to bring in from to-do into development? Okay, I might have to have a look at how much work in progress the different teams can handle at any given time. Okay, based on work that's been done over the last few weeks. Okay, are we on track with our lead time? We've got a lead time of 25 days. We are making that promise to the customer. The pizza delivery place is making that promise to you when they say from order to delivery is 45 minutes, or however long that time may be. Okay, so these are the sort of metrics I'm looking at. How much work has been discarded over the past month or so? What is our percentage of aborted work? Is there something that we need to do to address this, to bring that number down? Okay, and this system here is for software delivery, but you can use Kanban systems in many different organizations. It's all about managing the flow of work. Of course, we are very much in the IT software development world, so these are the examples that we're going to give. But Kanban can be used anywhere. You may even see Kanban every day in your everyday life. Okay, looking at just how you've got to do, and then you've got ready. You've got in progress, and then you've got done. Okay, what is the queue of work, and when is the work complete? Okay, so let's just have a quick recap on the general practices there. Just looking at the first column on the left, you've got visualize, you've got limit work in progress, you've got manage flow, you've got make policies explicit, you've got implement feedback loops, and you've got improve collaboratively and evolve experimentally. Okay, and this is shown in the context of this diagram here, which is Kanban for software delivery, and a Kanban board will look different in every organization. This is just one that I've put together based on what I've seen over the last 10 years or so. Okay, but you may go into another organization and similar concepts, but the wording might be different. There might be more columns or more policies, as they call it. As you can see here, I've broken my policies down. I've got an overall heading of in progress. That's then broken. What does in progress mean? That's then broken down into development, system integration testing, user acceptance testing. And what do they get broken down into? Code review, unit tests, development done, okay, test and test done, and so forth. Okay, so every Kanban system is tailored to where you work. It's not a one size fits all. It's basically what are the demands of your organization and the way your team works. So let's create a Kanban system visualized by a Kanban board to support those needs. Okay, and I think we are very good on time, because that then brings me to the end of this presentation. So I'll leave this screen up and I will have a look to see if there are any questions. Kanban is a very exciting topic. It's a very easy framework to apply in to anywhere, really. Scrum is another similar framework that you can use to manage workflow, but it's very much more conditioned, i.e. you have a scrum master, you have a product owner and so forth, and you have 2-week sprints, where Kanban doesn't really have much rules. It's just a framework that allows you to manage work. So very much easier to implement Kanban is, which makes it a great tool when working on any form of project, or even if it was to manage your home life and you've got the tasks that you need to do during the week, and you've got your to-do and your in progress, and you're done. Okay, so it looks like we've just approaching the hour mark, or is that the, I think it's 9.
Hi Julian, there is one question from my side. For Scrum, we are using the Jira tool. For Kanban, are we using any tool?
Sorry, just repeat your question there, sorry.
For Scrum, we are using the Jira tool, okay, to implement that framework. Okay, so for Kanban, are we using any tool?
That's a very good question. So what sort of tools can you use for Kanban? So you've got the global recognized tool in Jira, where Jira allows you to manage everything to do on a software development project. And you can also create a Kanban board in Jira, as well, as everything has moved to digital, as a lot of the world are still sort of working remotely. Okay, when in the office, you would have a Kanban board on a whiteboard with a marker, and you'd have physical post-it note tickets. But very much now, the world has moved into a digital space. You've got tools such as Jira, which is great for Kanban, but you also have Kanbanize. Kanbanize is also a very specific Kanban tool, which allows you to create and manage a Kanban system. Okay, and if you were to type in Kanban in the App Store on your mobile phones, you'd also see apps that are related for Kanban as well. But that's probably something that's more personal Kanban, as opposed to organizational or team Kanban. Trello is also good as well. Trello, if anyone's heard of Trello, if not, do look it up. Trello, very similar to Jira. Jira just probably does a bit more, but great tools that you can use to implement and manage Kanban.
Hi, Julian. I don't know if you can hear me. I have a question, please.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes, so for this Kanban and software delivery, the presentation board that we are seeing on the screen right now.
Yeah.
So I just have a question here about the order of work items that we have in the in progress column, the ones which we are already committed. So if the development column is having 5 work items, does it logically mean that the other columns would go in a decreasing number of work items, or the same number of work items, because something can get aborted in the development column, and then we can have just 4 moving from development to system integration testing, and then nothing gets aborted in SIT, and we have all the 4 moving to user acceptance testing? Does it work like that?
That's a
Is
very,
it
very, That's a very, very good question there. So, of course, we try to minimize the amount of aborted items as possible. But where they do happen, we need to group together and have those discussions and talk about how does that impact our work in progress. So, whoever asked that question there was absolutely spot on. If you are in development and testing is waiting for one of those items to come across, but yet an item from development has been aborted, what does that then mean for testing? Will they not have enough work to do? What would that look like? Okay, but with the amount of visibility that we have on the boards, we should hopefully be able to see those things ahead of time and address the issue sort of earlier before it happens. Okay, and this is the great aspect of visibility here, that whenever we have a problem or we have a stumbling block, a lot of the time the board will scream at you where that issue is and what's happening. So look at the columns that we have under development: code review, unit test. Okay, so we're looking at finding issues as early as possible. Okay, being able to really use our analysis skills to see if there's anything that could perhaps impact the work that we're doing. Okay, and also we have a conversation when we're bringing in work from to do into development. So what does that conversation look like? You might have stuff like an entry criteria. What is our entry criteria to bring work in from our to do to our development? And if it doesn't meet that entry criteria, then that's perhaps a work that we cannot be committed to.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And I have another question, Julian.
Yeah.
Now, when we are going into the done column, wherein the work has already got deployed, now supposing the customer suddenly has a change in requirements in the middle of the Kanban, in the middle of the sprint, if you call it. So, how does that affect our work items in the in progress columns?
Well, that's a very good question, because what we then have, we've got this amazing to-do column where we can escalate new tickets. Okay, and this is how we manage change. So that's a great question there. We have got the work to done, and all of a sudden, well, this is great, but we wouldn't mind adding this additional feature, which would complement the work that's been done. So we can then escalate another item in regards to creating a new ticket and prioritizing that item and making sure that it's the first in the queue to be brought in and pulled along. Okay, so it then gets priority over the other items in the to-do list because it's already complementing a ticket of work that's already in the done column. Okay, and this is what we call escalation, or expedite is the Kanban word for it, when you expedite a ticket and bring that ticket in as priority over the others. And the moment we have capacity for work in progress, we bring that ticket into play.
Okay, Julian, this is Ashish over here. You said that if something comes in between, then we move it to the done column and etc. etc. So, is there any kind of retrospective done in this as it is done in Scrum, like what we have achieved and how we are going to move forward?
Definitely. It may not be called a retrospective and it may not be in the exact same format as how you would do it in Scrum, but I think a retrospective is important in anything that you do, being able to look back at what you've done and is it working? Again, that comes under one of our feedback sessions. Okay, so you're looking retrospectively at the work, the way the team has worked, where your work in progress is, where they need to be. Is our lead time been delayed to 30 days as opposed to 25 days? And what can we do about that to make that better? So again, Kanban is a system that provides a framework to allow you to manage your work, but it doesn't have the set rules that Scrum will have, that will say sprint planning on Monday, retrospective on the second Friday, and it's very defined. There is very much what is needed to improve the system that we're working with. So retrospectives definitely are a feedback session that can be implemented whilst using Kanban. Okay, I think that was the last question there.
All right.
Or was there one more?
Are there any more questions? I guess we still have time for one more.
Yeah, one quick question. So how do you arrive at the WIP limit? I mean, how do you know what is the right WIP limit for the team? Is there how do you kind of arrive at, say, the WIP limit for this team should be, say, 5 or 10 or whatever, right? I mean, whether it is in progress or whatever state it is, how will you be able to arrive at that number?
Oh, for the work in progress, you mean?
Yeah, work in progress limit. Yes, WIP limit.
Yeah. So you're looking at capacity versus demand. You're looking at how many resources do you have. So if you have a development team and you have 4 developers and you're measuring how much work your developers handle at one time. So that might be a team of 2 junior developers and 2 senior developers. And you're having those conversations with your development team, or you're physically seeing it on the visual board, and you're able to get that feedback regularly as, do we not have enough work to do, or do we have too much work to do, or are we just at the right place? Okay, so that can potentially be a continuously changing number in our work in progress, but we try to get it as close to accurate as possible when we're looking at how much work can one team handle. Okay, as long as, again, I believe I mentioned earlier the difference between a push system and a pull system. When you've got a push system, you've got a management or someone that's distributing the work, who might be pushing the work onto you, where you do not have the capacity to do it all. But in a pull system, you pull work across to yourself once you have capacity to fit it in. Okay, and it's very much a far better system in managing workflow than for the work to be pushed onto. Okay, and this is the type of conversation that we have to get as close to the accurate number as possible into what is our work in progress limit. Okay, fantastic. Sushil, would you like to close off the session there?
Yes, I believe it was definitely a good session. We had some really good questions, and also, Julian, thank you for the session, and answering the questions, and clearing the doubts that people had. Once again, I'd like to thank our audience for tuning in today, and we will be having more webinars with Julian in the coming months. So I'd request all of you to kindly follow the KnowledgeHut page, where we will display all the details regarding the webinars very soon. And also, you can get in touch with Julian, I guess, through LinkedIn. If you have any questions, you can get them clarified as well offline. So, Julian, once again, thank you, and thank you everyone for attending. We'll see you soon in the next session.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Sushil, and thank you all.
Thank you.